Hello everybody, once again welcome back to my channel. Let's study together. It's time to revise on The Merchant of Venice written by William Shakespeare, Act 1, Scene 2. Here in the opening scene we can find Portia and Nerissa together talking about their self-affairs. Enter Portia and Nerissa. Portia says, "By my troth, Nerissa, my little body is aweary of this great world." By this, Portia wants to say, "O Nerissa, by the faith of my belief, I want to tell that my poor little body is very tired of this great big world." Nerissa says, "You would be, sweet madam, if your miseries were in the same abundance as your good fortunes are. And yet for aught I see they are as sick that surfeit with too much as they that starve with nothing. It is no means happiness, therefore, to be seated in the mean. Superfluity comes sooner by white hairs, but competency lives longer." By this Nerissa meant to say, "You would be tired, madam, if you had bad luck rather than wealth and good luck. But as far as I can tell, or as far as I can see, people with too much of sufferance are similar to those who have got nothing in their life. Both of them suffers the same misery. The best way to be happy is to be in between them. When you have too much, you get older soon, but having just enough helps you live longer." Portia, good sentence and well pronounced. Portia wanted to mean good point and well said. Nerissa says that would be better if well followed. Nerissa says it would be better if you actually applied it to your life. Then Portia continues, "If to do were as easy to know what were good to do, chapels had been churches, and poor men's cottages prince palaces. It is a divine that follows his own instruction. I can easier teach 20 what were good to be done than be one of the 20 to follow mine own teaching. The brain may devise laws for the blood, but a hot temper leaps over a cold decree. Such here is madness the youth, to skip over the mesh of good counsel the repel. But this reasoning is not in fashion to choose me a husband. O me, the word choose! I may neither choose whom I would, nor refuse whom I dislike. So is the will of a living daughter curbed by the will of a dead father? It's not hard, Nerissa, that I cannot choose one nor refuse none." By this, Portia wants to say, "Do you think it's that easy? If doing good deeds were as easy as knowing how to do them, then everyone would be better off. Small chapels would be big churches, and poor men's cottages would be prince palaces. It takes a good priest to practice what he preaches. For me, it is easier to lecture 20 people on how to be good than to be the one person out of 20 who actually does good things. The brain can tell the heart what to do, but what does it matter? Cold rules does not matter when you have got a hot temper inside you. Young people are like frisky young rabbits, and good advice is like a crippled old man trying to catch them. But thinking like this won't help me choose a husband. Oh, the word choose is strange. I can't choose who I like or refuse who I dislike. I am a living daughter, still controlled by the wishes of her dead father. Isn't it a pain that I can't choose or refuse anyone, Nerissa?" Nerissa says, "Your father was ever virtuous, and holy men at their death have good inspirations. Therefore, the lottery that he had devised in these 3 chests of gold, silver, and lead, whereof who chooses his meanings chooses you, will no doubt never be chosen by any rightly, but one who shall rightly love. But what warmth is there in your affection towards any of these princely suitors that already come? By this, Nerissa means to say, your father was an extremely moral man, and religious people get odd ideas on their deathbeds. Your father's idea was to have a cave with 3 boxes. The suitor who can figure out whether to pick the gold, silver, or lead box will solve your father's riddle. And that suitor, the man for you, no one will ever choose the right box who doesn't deserve your love. But tell me, do you like any of the princely suitor who have come? Portia says, I pray thee, overname them, and as you namest them, I will describe them, and according to my description, level at my affection. By this Portia means to say, I request you, Nerissa, run through the list. As you name them, I will describe them for you, and from my descriptions, you can guess how I feel towards them. Nerissa says, first, there is the Neapolitan prince. Nerissa means to say, well, first there was the prince from Naples. Portia says, eh, that's a colt indeed. For he doth nothing but talks of his horse, and he makes it a great appropriation to his own good parts that he can show him himself. I am much afraid, my lady, his mother played false with a smith. Portia meant to say, ah, yes, that stallion. He talks about his horse. He thinks it's great credit to his character that he can shoe a horse all by himself. I'm afraid his mother may have had an affair with a blacksmith. Nerissa says, then there is the Count Palatine. Nerissa says, then there's the Count Palatine. Portia says, he doth nothing but frown, as who should say, and you will not have me choose. He hears merry tales and smiles not. I fear he will prove the whipping philosopher when he grows old. Being so full of unmannerly sadness in youth, I'd rather married to the death's head with a bone in his mouth than to either of this. God defend me from these two. Portia means to say, he does nothing but frown, as if he wants to say, if you don't want me, I don't care. He doesn't even smile when he hears funny stories. If he is so sad and solemn when he is young, I can only imagine how much he will cry as an old man. No, I'd rather be married to a skull with a bone in its mouth than to either of those men. God protect me from these two. Nerissa says, how say you by the French lord, Monsieur Le Bon? Nerissa means to say, what do you think about the French lord, Monsieur Le Bon? Portia says, God made him and therefore let him pass for a man. In truth, I know it is a sin to be a mocker, but why he hath a horse better than that Neapolitan's, a better bad habit of frowning than the Count Palatine. He is every man in no man. If a throstle sing, he falls straight a capering. He will fence with his own shadow. If I should marry him, I should marry 20 husbands. If he would despise me, I would forgive him, for if he loves me to madness, I shall never requite him. By this, Portia wants to say, since God created him, we might call him a man. No, I know it is bad to make fun of people, but still, his horse is better than the Napoleon's, and he frowns more than the Count Palatine. He was trying to outdo everyone so much that you couldn't tell who he was. He started dancing every time a bird sang, and he was so eager to show off his fencing that he had fight with his own shadow. If I'd marry him, I might as well as marry the 20 husbands, because he's like 20 men all rolled into one character. I'd understand it if he hated me, since even if he loved me desperately, I'd never be able to love him back. Nerissa says, "What say you then to Falconbridge, the young Baron of England?" Nerissa means to say, "What about Falconbridge, that young English Baron?" Portia continues, "You know I say nothing to him, for he understands me not, nor I him. He hath neither Latin, French, nor Italian, and who will come into the court and swear that I have a poor pennyworth in English? He is a proper man's picture, but alas! Who can converse with a dumb show? How oddly he is suited! I think he bought his Juliet in Italy, his round hose in France, his bonnet in Germany, and his behavior everywhere." Portia means to say, "I have no option about him. We don't talk about because we do not understand each other. We don't speak Latin, French, or Italian, and you know how little I speak English. He's great looking, but how can you talk to someone who doesn't speak your language? He was dressed so oddly too. I think he's got his jacket in Italy, his ties in French, and his hat from Germany, and his behavior everywhere." Nerissa says in return, "What think you of the Scottish lord, his neighbour?" By this, Nerissa means to say, "What do you think of his neighbour, that Scottish lord?" Then Portia says, "That he hath a neighbourly charity in him, for he borrowed a box of the year of the Englishman, and swore he would pay him again when he was able. I think the Frenchman became his surety and sealed under for another." By this, Portia means to say, "I think he is very forgiving, since he let the Englishman slap him on the ear without hitting him back. Rather than defending himself, he just threatened to pay the Englishman back later. Then the Frenchman promised to help the Scot to pay the Englishman back, and he added a slap of his own." Other hand, there is a reference that Portia draws by saying Scot pay Englishmen back. The Scots inflicted a heavy debt on English army led by Edward II as they were attempting to relieve besieged forces at Stirling Castle at the Battle of Bannockburn on 24th June, where the Scottish nobles sent the Declaration of Arbroath to Pope John affirming Scottish independence from England. Prior to that, Scotland was an unindependent kingdom. Later, Scotland was an independent kingdom through the Middle Ages and fought wars to maintain its independence from England. The two kingdoms were joined in personal union in 1603 when the Scottish King James VI became James I of England, and the two kingdoms united politically into one kingdom called Great Britain in 1707. There is a reference where Portia draws for the Scots to pay Englishmen back. It's a reference that is drawn from Why Did Scotland Rebel Against England? De facto independence was established in 1314 at the Battle of Bannockburn. The war was caused by English kings attempting to establish their authority over Scotland, while Scots fought to keep English rule and authority out of Scotland. Now Nerissa says, "How you like the young German, the Duke of Saxony, nephew?" By this she means to say, how did you like the young German, the Duke of Saxony's nephew? Then Portia continues, very vilely in the morning when he is sober, and most vilely in the afternoon when he is drunk. When he is best, he is a little worse than a man, and when he is worst, he is little better than a beast. And the worst fall that ever fell, I hope I shall make shift to go without him. So by this Portia wants to say, he is pretty awful in the morning when he is sobering up, and even worse in the afternoon when he is drunk. At his best, he is little less than a man, and at his worst, he is little more than an animal. If he got unmarried and he tragically met his demise, I am sure I could find a way to go on without him. It is then when Nerissa says, if he should offer to choose and choose the right casket, you choose refuse to perform your father's will if you should refuse to accept him. By this she means to say, if he offers to play the game and chooses the right box, but then you reject him, you will be disobeying your father's last wish. Then Portia says, therefore, for fear of the worst, I pray thee, set a deep glass of Rhenish wine on the contrary casket. For if the devil be within, and that temptation without, I know he will choose it. I will do anything, Nerissa, ere I'll be married to a sponge. By this Portia wants to mean, I know Nerissa, so please put a nice big glass of white wine on the wrong box. I know he'll get tempted and choose that one. I'll do anything rather than drunk and get married to a drunk man, Nerissa. Nerissa says, you need not fear, lady, for having any of these lords. They have acquainted me with their determinations, which is indeed to your return to their home and to you trouble you with no more suit unless you may be won by some other sort than your father's imposition depending on the casket. She means to say, you don't have to worry about any of these lords, my lady. They have all told me what they want, which is to go back home and give up on you, unless there was some other way to win you than your father's pick the box test. Portia continues, if I live to be as old as Sibylla, I will die as chaste as Diana unless I be obtained by the manner of my father's will. I am glad this parcel of wooers are so reasonable, for there is not one among them but I dote on his very absence, and I pray God grant them a fair departure. Portia means to say, I'll die an old maid unless I can be one according to the rules set by my father's will. I am glad these suitors are sensible enough to stay away. The only thing I like about them is that they are not there. I wish them all safe trips home. Nerissa says, do you not remember, lady, in your father's time a Venetian, a scholar, and a soldier that came thither in company of the Marquis of Montferrat? Nerissa means to say, do you remember a Venetian scholar and a soldier who accompanied the Marquis of Montferrat here once when your father was still alive? Then Portia recalls, yes, yes, it was Bassanio, as I think he was so called. By this she means to say, yes, that was Bassanio, and I think it was his name, because he was being called by that name. Nerissa says, true, madam, he of all the men that ever my foolish eyes looked upon was the best deserving a fair lady. Nerissa means to say, yes, madam, and that's the one. He deserves a beautiful wife more than all the other men I have seen, and it was my eyes that was bestowed on him, and I was not being able to turn off my eyes from him. He was the best who deserves the most fair lady of Belmont, that is you. Portia says, I remember him well, and I remember him worthy of thy praise. She means to say, I remember him well, and my memory tells me that he deserves your praise. In the middle of their conversation, a serving man or a servant enters. How now? What news? Hello, do you have any news to tell now? This is what Portia means. The serving man or the servant says, the four strangers seek for you, madam, to their leave, and there is a forerunner come from a fifth, the Prince of Morocco, who brings word the prince's master will be here tonight. The servants means to say, the four suitors are looking for you so they can say goodbye, madam, and there's a messenger representing a fifth one, the Prince of Morocco, who says the prince will be here tonight. Then Portia continues to say, if I could bid the fifth welcome with so good a heart as I can bid the four farewell, I should be glad of his approach if he have the condition of a saint and the complexion of a evil. I rather he would shrine me than wive me. Come, Nerissa, to the servant Sirha, go before. While we shut the gates upon another knocks at the door, exuberant. Portia means to say, if I could say hello to the fifth one as happily as I say goodbye to the first four, I would be very happy as he is coming. If he is a good person, if he is a saint from his heart, but is black as a devil, I would rather hear my confession than marrying me. Let's go, Nerissa. And to the servant she says, go ahead. As soon as we shut the door on one suitor, another starts knocking. By saying this, they all goes away. By this we come to an end of Act 2 Scene 2. If you have liked the explanation, please subscribe my channel and hit the notification bell. And if you want the explanations, the critical appreciations, the summary, the characterizations or the question answers, you can message me or contact me even by commenting below.